Hello and welcome everybody to another build video. This is a very special build video and in some ways. Not the video that I originally planned for today, but I think being that this came in, I think it's very interesting and something that I would really like to talk about. So what you see before you is the board that got me into the hobby. When I first left the mainstream mechanical keyboard world, I was running a G910 Orion by Logitech with Romer G tactile switches that always seemed to fail within 1 to 1.5 years. And I was always having to replace the board, and those boards started out at like $250, then the second one was $200, and then the third one was $150. And as it started to get dated, I was able to get it for about $100, but it just got to the point where I was tired of having to take out 30-something screws just to try to fix it, and I never could actually fix the boards. So I kind of got into this hobby for the ease of access. And when I got into the hobby, I didn't know what I wanted. I thought I wanted a full-size keyboard. I think a lot of people entering the hobby think that. And then maybe a TKL. But then I saw the GMMK Pro, and I was like, I really like this board, but man, is that expensive for a keyboard. And yeah, I thought it made sense, right? I thought it was what I wanted, but I didn't know how to get that without spending what at the time I thought was a lot of money. So what I ended up doing was conferring with Discord servers to try to get an idea of what was out there. And this was one of the ones that was presented to me. This is the NextTime 75. It's white labeled under different resellers and things like that. But I bought this one off of AliExpress. And this was the first keyboard that I ever ordered. This keyboard came, the JST connector was broken, I had to solder it and refix it. But this has a special place on my heart because it is my first really enthusiast board. And the reason why we're talking about this today is because underneath of it, I have the new aluminum version of the NextTime 75. And I'm really looking forward to building this today. I ordered this off PBoW, but this is now available on AliExpress. And I think that's great that it's more readily available to people, because if you're looking at this, this is a plastic polycarbonate board, north-facing steel plate. It is gasket mounted, but there's really no gasket flex or anything like that. It's really just isolation. But I'm curious to see what the NextTime 75 aluminum edition will bring us. And they did include some additional things we'll talk about here in just a second that I think were nice to have that I did not have on my original NextTime 75. Now, the reason why we're not doing an unboxing is because I did order this from PBoW. It was already unboxed by PBoW for photo's sake. So there really wasn't much about the unboxing experience. These NextTime 75s tend to be in a very simple box, but the inclusion of this soft touch microfiber case type thing, that's a huge bonus because this is alu and it is anodized. But they also include a regular micro USB to USB A, and it's just standard, just a rubberized cable, nothing fancy. And then we get a little bag of goodies here, which is, it's going to be our hardware to put it together. That's a little unfortunate. There's some sticky stuff on the knob. This is, instead of being like an aluminum outer shell and then plastic inside knob, this guy is aluminum all the way around. It's very interesting because it looks like it's going to friction fit, like press on there, so I'm not sure how that's going to work. Get a little keycap puller, which I hate these things. But one of the nice inclusions was this set of, well, it'd be nice if everything wasn't stuck to it, but it's these bump-ons. And these bump-ons are, as you can see, they are quite large. And if I grab my plastic and NextTime 75, you'll see that I have used my own bump-ons. And these are Hudson Hi-Fi isolation bump-ons that are used for like turntables. and I liked how it increased the typing angle of the board. But in addition to increasing the typing angle, it's very soft silicone, and it allows for a little bit of extra bounce on the desktop surface. So it's pretty neat how they included these larger bump-ons. So I'm pretty excited to see how that looks and how it feels. I've been using a lot of boards with a lower typing angle lately just because I don't want to put sticky stuff on the bottom of a nice keyboard. But let's take a look at this NextTime 75. Oh man, it is actually more beautiful than I was hoping for. So that is quite purple. I thought it was going to be more like the GMK anodization or whatever, where it's purple, but it's like really silvery purple. But this is nice. And looking at this here, it looks like there's actually flex. You can see it with the light reflecting over there on the left. There's some flex to this, so I'm curious to see what kind of experience we can get out of this. Unfortunately, we are still using, or we do still have, north-facing PCB. So these sockets are all north-facing. Stabilizers they're bone dry, so there's really nothing on them, so they will need to be lubed, possibly clipped. For today's video, we're just going to use them as is. And then of course, there's a polycarbonate plate here instead of the steel plate that you get in the plastic versions. So let's go ahead and take this apart and see what we have internally. Of course, we're going to use our cheapy wannabe iFixit kit. I'll have a link to that in the description. And looks like these are going to be using 1.5, if I had to guess, hex bits, because it does ship with a I'm not sure if I actually want to do this or not. Let's see if it works. I'm not happy with that. The holes are not large enough, so it's kind of dinking up the ano, which I don't want that. So as much as I'd like to use my fancy dancy kit, we're gonna just use the included Allen key. This is kind of bogus, but we'll use it. And they don't seem to be ferrous, so I guess we'll just have to flip it over and get them all out. So let's go ahead and get these screws out, and then we'll talk about it after I got them out. Alright, we got them all loosened. This one right here felt like it might have some Loctite in it, or it was cross-threaded, so we'll see. Okay. 4 up top. 4 for the bottom. They all look to be the same size. They are pretty nice little hex bolts. So if you look here, got a nice little head on top of them. Pretty reasonable, not anodized or anything, but reasonable nonetheless. And I do prefer those over screws. Okay, let's flip it back over. Interesting. Okay, so in the NextTime 75 non-alu, it's a very interesting design. We'll talk about this in a second. They did not include Poron, it was silicone. Now, what I want to show is if you look here, it's not like your standard gasket mount, right? Like these are these sit flush, and I don't know how these do anything at all, because since it's flush, I can see it's straight flush, these little gasket wings are meant to hit that. But you see here on the bottom, they're cut out, and then there's clearly more pour on under here. But on the top, there's no cutout for that gasket wing to float. So this gasket, quite literally on the top, quite literally does zip, zero, nada, nothing. So that is very curious. I also want to point out something else, which is kind of cool, is if you're not a fan of gasket, if you look here, got these little tabs, and they go all the way around, and there's corresponding screw holes on the top plate. So you can top mount this if you prefer top mount. And there are still people out there that do prefer top mount. I just recently built a top mount board that we're going to be discussing here pretty soon that I actually have no quarrels with at all. I love it. So let's take this out. Got a nice, you know what? Looking at this, I'm pretty sure this is the exact same PCB. And when I received this last time, this red wire here, get this out. So the red wire on that JST when I received the black one was actually ripped out of the little connector end. So, I wasn't able to just simply replace it because I didn't have any other JST stuff laying around. And I ended up having to push that pin out a little bit, and it was already crimped and too small for me to really do anything with. And I soldered it to that connector end rather than, really diving into it. But it works. I've been driving it. It's one of my favorite boards to drive for the longest time. This is dope. We get a nice little pour-on insert, and I've got some other fillers that we can work with too. We get the daughter board, which is always nice to have, especially when you've got some sort of flex. And we definitely got flex. I think I might revisit this at some point and put some gaskets on the top to kind of actually give it something to bounce off of rather than slapping up against that, because it's actually not creating any isolation either, because there's just none sticking down at all. So these aren't thick enough. I might rip these out and actually put something thicker there, so it just barely pokes out. But for now, we're gonna run it as is. But polycarbonate plate, if you look here, in typical fashion in these days, we've got plate foam. There is no PE foam. Gonna rectify that today. And we'll put some PE over it and I think we're gonna remove these standoffs, and then we're gonna load it with foam. Let's be real, I like the foam sound, and that's what this is about, building things that I enjoy. Some boards I like to hear sing and do their own thing, but I also enjoy the foam. The foam is going to be difficult in this one though, because if you look here, you might be able to see those little pieces. It's got little diffusion plates, because this particular board has side RGB. So this is very much a budget-oriented GMMK Pro alternative. So in this board, they include this piece of foam, but I've also got some neoprene, and I picked out a nice pretty pink felt piece to put in here. I've been really digging the way felt has been sounding lately. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab some scissors here, and we're gonna cut this felt to size. And again, we're gonna leave a gap on the sides because we want to leave room for those LEDs to shine through. know some of you guys have given me advice on cutting straight, everything from having a sharper knife to using different tools. And believe me when I say I'm working on it. But every tool you purchase is just that, it's another purchase. So a little bit at a time here, guys. And then I think we'll do the pour on layer after. And then hopefully that gives us enough room. And then we've got a neoprene sheet here that we're gonna have to cut the size as well. See, the problem I have with this is when I try to cut it, I'm not on a flat surface. It wants to fold in on itself and it always comes out a little crooked. Like the line is never straight. But I think that will do what we need it to do. And you know, ideally what we want is we want to close in these gaps here too, to kind of isolate that, but I think we'll be fine. Right now our focus is making sure that we, on the sides, we keep that open to allow for the light to shine into those sides and then dissipate out. So let's set this aside for a moment. And then we've got our plate here. And this plate seems to use some of the standoffs that are double-sided screws, so it's just a female. So you can take it off, you'll have to take it off from both sides. So this is where our screwdriver kit comes in handy again. And this is just going to be a Phillips bit. And I'm going to use a PH1 on this because that's usually what it is. And I'm doing this to try to give it more regional flex. And what I mean by that is, like, I want, yeah, it's just spinning. There we go. What I want is I want it to be able to one second, I just dropped the thing. Well, that's gone. We'll have to find it later when we sweep. But I wanted to have that different area flex. I want it to be able to flex around the board in different places, but that is almost irrelevant because there's foam on it, so there's not a ton of flex to begin with, but we'll see how that turns out. This does use a different kind of standoff than I was expecting. I thought it was going to be a female. This is actually its own thing where it's like a barrel that goes in there and then the screws in top down. So you want to make sure that you just, well, I guess you could unscrew from the top or the bottom. It'll come apart either way because both sides have a Phillips side to them. So let's go ahead and get the rest of these out and then we'll come back and put some PE foam on it. Alright, that's the last one. I was thinking about it just now, and the PE foam sheets, the rolls that I have, they're a little bit thicker than I would like. I would prefer something that is like a 0.5 millimeter, but these rolls that I've been able to find that are easily accessible, they're typically 1.5 millimeters. So I may end up putting the standoffs back on the ends, just so there's no issue with the plate popping off. Put that on there for now. And these are plate mount stabilizers, and it does have, this is cool, this is new. I'm going to use the plate mounts for now, but the first time I've seen this on the NextTime series is the ability to use PCB mount. Whoops. The ability to use PCB mount rather. So we can put PCB mount stabs on this and it should support it. Now, unfortunately, I am low on stabilizers at the moment. So what we're going to do for now is we're just going to use the plate mount ones here. And I do need to take them out of the board. So here's what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and remove these guys from the board. I'm going to get them lubed up, and then I will cut the PE foam sheet because I really wanted to unbox this with you guys and, you know, get a first look at it. So I haven't actually pre-built this to test and make sure it's, you know, and lube the stabilizers and whatnot. So I will see you guys in about 10 minutes, and we should have some basically lubed stabilizers and then some PE shut out. So maybe 20 minutes or so. So I'll see you guys on the other side. All right, so we've got our stabilizers lightly lubed up and ready to go onto the PCB. We've got our PE foam cut here ready to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this set and aligned, and then we're going to talk about switches, and we'll see if we can get this to, might have up at the plate foam here too, but we will put this on here and see what we can come up with, see if we can get it to stick or whatever. Okay, that seems to be a pretty good alignment there. And then our stabs go into the foam. Alright, so the switches that we're going to use today are Strawberry Milks. These are Strawberry Milk linears. It's something I picked up a while ago for one of the mod builds, but never did end up going in any of those configurations, even though it's hit the desk like 5 or 6 times. So let's go ahead and alright. Cool container, but not exactly practical. But yeah, let's get these guys put in here and you know, see what kind of fun we can have with them. Alright, we got the 4 corners in, and as I suspected, it looks like we're going to have a little bit of lift off the plate, but or off the PCB, because we have no standoffs in. But I'm going to go around, and if I feel like it's not something that's going to stay put, we'll put those standoffs in. So let's go ahead and get these switches into this kit so we can get this PCB assembly into the board. Alright, all the switches are in. And as I was doing this, I realized I didn't talk much about what this switch is. So this is, like I said, this is the strawberry milk and like the strawberry color, the colorway. And it's a linear switch. It's a 67 gram bottom out. Believe the spring is a dual stage, but we can check that real quick. But this is a switch that is made by Tecsee. And one of the reasons we're using these is because this is in a north facing configuration, and Teksees are long pole switches, and I'm hoping to avoid north facing interference on the keycaps that we're going to be utilizing. So it is a single, looks to be 18mm long spring, very much like what we're going to have in the cream sodas, gold plated. So nice. So these are a little bit heavier. They're going to feel like more like somewhere between the cream sodas and the tropical waters, because tropical waters are quite heavy. So let me go ahead and get this plate trimmed up, we'll injection loop some stabilizers, and then we'll start putting the build together. Alright, so we've got that trimmed. I also forgot to mention that the material that those switches are made out of, it is a nylon top and a nylon bottom. So this has a lot of potential here, and for a pretty decent mid-clack configuration. So let's go ahead and get this board together, and then we'll lube these stabilizers. So bring our stack back over here and dropping it into our gaskets. Okay, so we removed all flex by doing that. So why don't let's take out the felt. It's adding bit too much tightness. I think that getting that extra millimeter back will be nice, so that way we do get it to fit down in there without being too poppy sounding or too high pitched. So JST back in, drop the connector in the slot there, and that's actually a perfect fit without the felt. Sorry, pink felt. It was fun while it lasted. And the top sits right on there like that. I'm gonna flip her over. And sadly, we're going to not be able to use our fancy screwdriver kit because I don't want to scratch the ano on this. But let's go ahead and get this back together. And I'll see you when we've got all of our bolts back in. Okie dokie, back together and looking pretty beautiful. So let me get this cleaned up real quick, and we'll talk about the keycaps that are going to go on this. So what we're doing here is we lift up just slightly so we can see the wire end, and there's a bit of a gap above it, and I just inject a little bit into that gap. It'll be kind of mushy when we put the caps on it. And then we're just gonna work that mush out of it. And then if the tick returns, we'll just inject a little bit more and keep repeating that process. So the keycaps that we're gonna look at today are another set of NovelKeys. So these are the PBoW, purple, blue on white. And I thought these were really pretty. I picked them up to put on a purple Mammoth 75, but extras of those haven't dropped yet. So for today, we're going to use the PBoW on this purple board since it's more purple than I thought it was going to be. I was intending to put Milkshake on it, but I think it's a little too dark for Milkshake. Now these are NovelKeys PBT keycaps, and I think they're quite pretty. They've got purple and blue on white. I think it's a very nice color combination. Not really matchy purple, but I think theming wise it'll be very nice, especially with the contrasting blue modifiers that we've got in here. So let's go ahead and pop this on this board. All right, there's our keycaps, and last but not least, we got the knob that goes on. It's just a friction fit. I don't love it. It's kind of like a weird gold color, but I don't hate it. As far as the way the keycaps came out, I think they look pretty nice, and I'm happy to report that there's no interference here. So I'm going to put the bump-ons, well, let's put the bump-ons on it together. So totally spaced and forgot to do that. And then we'll do a sound test and see what we think. And this is kind of a nuisance because it's got all the screws attached to it. Okay. You can get bump-ons like this that are less rounded and more like higher too. I've got some of those in the closet. We're gonna try these bump-ons because, you know, they are provided. The cutouts seem to be made for them, sort of. And you can find bump-ons like this on Amazon, local hardware store. And if you get larger ones like I have on the plastic NT75, it just basically covers these holes. Or these cutouts for it, rather. So the bump-ons are on. And yeah, that typing angle is certainly a bit more comfortable, at least for me. So let's go ahead and do a typing test and see what our thoughts are. All right, well, there's a couple things to be said about this. I really think it looks good. I do like the PBoW. It's not quite the right shade of purple, but I'm not mad about that. I'm not really mad about anything about this build. I think it was worth going through Superbuy, and I'll put a link to that in the description. I will put a link to that, and that's how I got this from PBoW, is I used a third party to purchase for me here in the United States, and it was worth every bit of that, because really this is reliving my first board but in a different state, and this is everything that I kind of hoped for in it and more. Very interesting sound profile. I mean, it's foamy, but it's also, it's kind of like a deep foamy. I don't really know. I feel like I never achieve what I set out to achieve when I build a board, and I just kind of go with it at this point. But I'm very happy with this. I think the build quality is pretty nice. I think it feels more robust again than the Q1 from Keychron. So if you're looking at a Q1 and you don't necessarily need or want QMK VIA support, I would recommend maybe taking a look at this. I will say that having the QMK VIA support, south-facing sockets, those are all nice to haves, because you have this kind of future-proofing, or whatever you want to call it. I think that has its benefits. But as far as the price point on this, I think right now this is just over $120. So this is definitely worth $120, and you can get different knobs for it if you're not happy with the knob. It gives you the extra keys for your navs, so you're not limited to 2 navs, or like the Satisfaction 75 I found out last night ditches the F13 in exchange for an OLED, and then still only has 3 navs. But this has got everything you pretty much need. Is it anything that like blows me away? Like, no, like I don't feel like it's on par with the Mod 007, which also has the north facing sockets, plus you're going to have the software from Akko that is recognized. I have a sneaking suspicion that when I plug this in and I try to actually program these navs, that the software is going to kick back as a virus. It's a false positive, I promise you that, but it is still one of those things where it's kind of a pain in the butt. But if you're looking for an inexpensive aluminum, straight up aluminum, $120, it's not that bad. It's a pretty good deal. I would still, if you got the money, I would still recommend getting an Akko. If you prefer QMK, I still recommend taking that money and getting the Q1. But yeah, pretty awesome. If you want to see more boards like this and you want to help support the channel, be sure to like this video, share it with your friends, and hit that subscribe button, and that will help me know that everyone is still interested in this, and it will help me get to a point where I can get more examples of these types of things to build for you guys. So I appreciate everyone hanging out with me. You guys are great. I love the comments. Keep the comments coming. You guys really lift my spirits by commenting and talking about your builds and the compliments that you leave. I really appreciate all that. So every one of you, you guys have been amazing, and the channel growth is much more than I could have expected. So thank you for that. But yeah, we've got some more builds coming up. I have some equipment coming in to kind of help with sound tests. I have cream soda samples that should be arriving next week that are the correct samples. The original ones had to be were not quite where they needed to be, so we've got new samples coming. So we should see a launch of the cream soda group buy hopefully very soon, within the next few weeks to a month. But stay tuned for that. And I had a great time building this board. Thank you guys again for hanging, and until next time, y'all have a good one.